G'day, welcome back to Australian Natural Hide Tanning. Today what I'd like to talk about is the different skins you're going to come across. I've got one here, actually a couple of things I want to discuss. This is a deer skin. Now, my fault, when we moved I packed this up and I forgot to unpack the box I put it in. This had already been tanned, but it had oil sitting in it. Okay, so the skin actually didn't rot, it's just that the oil sat in it. And what happened is, well, pretty much, as you can see, the oil got in, and if you can do that to a hide, don't even use it. You know, it's not useless, and that's what I want to talk about today. It's definitely not useless, but you don't want to make anything out of it, you know, because that's just not, you know. I mean, some of it here, I started tanning it. All this is good. Okay, it's only certain sections that had the oil sitting in it, and that's because I tan with oil. You know, one of the methods I use is Dasson and oil, which I explained in my video. I can feel the oil on it. And it was a silly mistake on my behalf, but look, we all make these mistakes. So what do you do if you make a mistake like this? You know, you're going to throw it in the bin. You can't really use it for anything. See, it's still tearing. So you definitely wouldn't sell it, and you probably wouldn't make anything out of it. Although, as I said, this section here, I've tried ripping, and it's still good. But saying that, no, why would I risk it? I wouldn't risk it. So what you can do if you come across a skin like this, you know, and sometimes what happens is you just get a skin that just, oh, it's just no good. You know, you might look at it and start off and think, oh wow, this is going to be a good one, and then it just, you know. The other thing is, if you're using the method I use in my video, and I'll explain in my DVD, if you put your hide in water because you want to take the hair off, don't leave it too long. You know, I usually leave it overnight, and I have the goat skin there. I actually left it in there for nearly 2 days, and it's basically done what this has done. You know, so what I'll have to have a look at it and see whether it is a weak spot in the hide, or whether it's actually going rotten. If it's going rotten, what I'll do is more than most likely throw it away. Okay. What you can do though, like if you've got skins like this that aren't any good, is you can start to cut them up. Start to cut them up into smaller pieces. Okay. And put them in, you know, a container, a metal container, and heat the water up. Don't boil it, just heat it up, and drop all your scraps. Even when you're working, keep any offcuts, because what you can do is make glue out of them. I will do a segment on making glue shortly. At the moment I don't have enough room or actually the time to do it, but what you do is keep them. See, all this hide, I've got 2 things I can do with it. You know, instead of saying, it's no good and throwing it away, there's 2 things I can do. I can either cut it up into small sections, you know, little bits that might be a bit too big, just pieces like that, you know, even pieces like that, and put them aside in a plastic bag. Make sure you seal it, because bugs will still get in. And when you have enough, this is more than enough. You know, our skin is more than enough. When you have enough, you put it in your pot. You put all this in, cover it, just cover it with water and boil it. Don't have the water boiling, I should say, not boiling, simmering. And what you're doing is you're extracting the glue out of the hides. And what you do is well, for thousands of years, that's what glue they used. You know, I do know one of the things, the Northern Indians, Plains Indians in America, what they would do is they'd make their glue, they would get the sinew off the back, and they would put on their bows, and that makes their bow shoot even faster, shoot the arrow even faster. But that's another story. Or the other thing, as I said, this is still quite alright. What I can do is I can wet this, you know, get it back to where it's wet, and then I can fold it up tight as you want, as loose as you want, as long as you want, as short as you want. It's up to you. Okay, then what I do is I just put it somewhere so it doesn't unravel, so it stays like that. And when it's dry, there you go, give it to the dog, let him chew on it. It won't hurt him. You know, when you go into the supermarket and you see all those you know, bone looking things, that's all hide, that's just raw hide. You know, that's all they've done. So you can get this and just cut strips and give it to your dog. You know, I probably wouldn't give them all this, I'd probably just make 1 or 2 out of them, you know, for them to chew on. The rest of it I would just cut up to this and I'll boil it up for glue. Yeah, so that's there's no wastage. You know, if your hide isn't rotten, there is absolutely no wastage in a hide. The other thing that I want to quickly touch on is this this mess here I've got is actually a rabbit. Okay, when most people shoot their rabbit or dispatch their rabbits, what they'll do is they'll cut the feet, and later down the track I'll show you that. We are getting our own rabbits, so I'll be able to show you. This is a wild caught rabbit that I've got off my supplier. Okay, now with rabbits, if you're going to get rabbits and breed them to eat and to have the fur, you know, to eat, because if you make blankets and that out of them, it's absolutely beautiful and warm, really warm. You know, this is, as I said, this is a wild caught rabbit. That's why it's so small. You know, just remember, if you buy rabbits off people, you might, someone might go shooting rabbits. If the rabbit is under 15 weeks, okay, so about, if it's less than 4 months old, you'll more than most likely put holes in the skin, because the skin hasn't developed enough to be durable, and you just put holes in it. You know, a lot of people come to grief where they say, oh, I've got my rabbit and I've tried tanning the hide and it's fallen apart and ripped, and they will rip, even a 6-month-old, they will rip. You've got to be very gentle with them. The 2 tools I use on rabbits is my hands and a spoon. I don't use a sharp knife, I don't even use a blunt knife. I use something with a nice round edge. Most times you can get away with just pulling the flesh off with your hands. And that there, the white, that's the skin. I don't need to keep pulling it. Okay, there's no flesh on that. So I just come over to where I can see there's flesh. Now one of the things too, when you do a rabbit, this is wet, damp. Okay, it's not dry and it's not wet. If it's sloppy wet, it's going to be difficult. You're more than most likely to tear the skin. So it has to be damp enough, as you can see that the skin is just peeling off. Okay, so it has to be damp enough to do that, but not too wet that I'm going to pick the skin up, because the skin, if you scratch at the skin and pull at it, as you can see there, I'm pulling back at the skin. See, even that's a bit of skin, and I don't want that. I don't want to be pulling at that. I just want the flesh. See, there's the flesh there, and you just pull at the flesh. Now when they skin them, as I say, it's just like pulling out a tube. You know, they cut the feet, they cut around the neck, and then they just roll it off. They just peel it off, and that's why it's like a tube. You know, then what I do usually, I'll get the flesh off it. There's not a lot of fat on it. You know, very little fat. There is some, but very little fat. I'll get the fat off, and then I would determine where do I want to cut it. You know, I'll probably cut it down here. I can see and feel, but I can see the fur on this one's not real good. See, it's all matted, and hence being a wild rabbit. So I've got several things I can do with this. I can either get a pair of scissors and go through and just take all the fur off and defur it that way. If you're going to defur your rabbit, be very, very, very careful. You know, because the skin on a rabbit is very, very durable. You know, extremely durable, but very thin while you're working it. You know, it's very easy to tear. So what we do, see, this is starting now to get a little bit too dry. Okay, even though it's still wet, still damp, it's getting a little bit too dry. Okay, see, that's not coming off. I mean, it comes off reasonably easily, you know, but the most important thing is if you know the age of the rabbit. You know, if the rabbit's over 4 months old, then you pretty well know, yep, I should be able to flesh it fairly easy. And these ones here, I don't really know when it was dispatched. It might be 4 months old for all I know. You know, so it's not a fresh hide, or possibly not a fresh hide. So that's all I do. It's a very, very soft when you do one. It's a very, very soft. It's a little bit like silk. Very soft, very, very nice. And to tan one of these, I mean, if you've done if you've dispatched it yourself, you might have done a headshot. You may not have the brains. You know, not you, but you may not have the rabbit brains, I should say. If you find that you've got a rabbit and the brains of the rabbit are no good, just use a couple of eggs. You know, a couple of chalk eggs. You know, once again, I explain that all in my DVD that I've made. It's on our webpage. I prefer natural tanning, using all natural materials that I can get hold of whenever I want. So if you have a look here, you'll see that. I won't even work that. See, that's flesh, but it's dry. So all I'll do if I try and work that is I'll just rip the skin. Okay, so I won't even do that. But down here, that's pretty well much all done. You know, I won't poke at that too much, or else I will put a hole in it, because they are very, very thin. But yeah, so that's rabbit. I mean, as I say, we have rabbits everywhere. Oh, I shouldn't say that because we don't have rabbits up here. But, you know, New South Wales, Queensland, oh look, most parts of the world have got rabbits. You can live off them. The people in the Great Depression, they lived off rabbit. Just now we have a few more diseases. Just check the eyes out. Make sure the eyes aren't diseased. You know, have a look at the liver when you cut him open. You know, make sure the liver's not diseased. And if that's fine, yeah, you can eat it. As I say, people lived off it. But that's the rabbit. So that's what you do with the rabbit. As you can see along here, it's all getting dry. So I'm not even going to touch that, because I know what will happen. That's still nice and moist. That's getting dry in here. So you know what I'll do with this now. Chuck it back in my bucket of water, leave it there for 5-10 minutes to rehydrate. Give it a squeeze. Okay, remember when you have a hide and you're keeping the fur on it, never wring it. never get the hide and start to wring it. Don't do that, because that'll pull on the hair and possibly slip it. Always just get it and squeeze it. Like this. When I'm ready with this, all I'll do is that. Just squeeze it out. That'll get enough water out. That's all I'll do. Alright, don't try and wring it out, or because the water will evaporate fairly quick. Same as all this. If you see that, and that's how I know that I've made a boo-boo, because you look at that and you might think, oh, that's wet. No, that's oil. It's oil sitting in there. It won't hurt, I mean, if you boil up and make glue, it won't hurt it. There's not enough oil in it to worry the glue, and most times the oil will sit on top of the glue anyway. Our dog, I actually had this up on the thing there, and he still took it. I came out this morning and found, half the skin lying out in the yard. So, but that happens. So I hope this has helped you. I'm not really. I was going to do that skin today, but as I said, I had a really busy day yesterday. Things came up that I couldn't get back to it. If that ever happens, find the 30 seconds. Just grab a plastic bag, pull it out of the water, squeeze as much as you can out of it, chuck it in the plastic bag, put it in the freezer. You can let it sit there and dry, but if you want to keep on going and don't want to have to repeat your process, that's all you do. Just chuck it in a plastic bag, in a bag that's not going to leak in your freezer, because you don't want it leaking in your freezer. Chuck it in a plastic bag, get as much water out, chuck it in the bag, chuck it in your freezer. That way you don't have to worry about it. You can come back in 4 months' time and take the process back up. So yeah, don't ever forget freezer. Even if you've got a hide, someone might bring a hide in and say, oh, do you want this? Sheep hide or whatever, fox hide, and you might think, oh wow, yeah, I'd really, but I don't have any salt. It's okay. Just put it flesh to flesh. I've shown this in one of my videos on my channel. Just flesh to flesh, roll it up, and make sure it's still damp. Make sure it's still flexible, because you don't want it stiff, or else when you try and fold it, it's gonna pull apart. So yeah, just roll it up, put it in a plastic bag, put it in the freezer. It'll stay there. 20 years, 30 years. It'll stay there for as long as it takes to you to be ready. Sorry to keep looking this way. My hair keeps going into my eyes. Alright, I'm going to leave it there. Don't forget, please push that like button, share, subscribe, and go and check out our webpage, www.australiannightjihadtanning.com. The other thing I didn't want to do it with this wind as well. I'm going to do a segment on if you have seeds, with what's going on in the world lately, things are going crazy. If you have seeds, what we do, especially in an area like this that's dry, what we do. As you can see, everything's blowing away, the tub's blowing away. It's summer coming on. Now I think it's about 32, 33 degrees here. So it's spring at the moment, or what we call spring. I'm just watching everything blown away. Alright, you take care now. Stay safe, stay proud, and we'll catch you in the next one.